Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be making my version of creme Catalana gelato. It has the authentic flavor of creme Catalana infused to this cold and silky smooth gelato. I'll be using some orange, cinnamon, and lemon, and it's going to be simmering and it's going to be really delicious, and I'm excited to show you how. So, let's get started. So, to get started, I'm going to turn my stove on to low heat, around to medium to low, and I'm going to pour in 350 milliliters of whole milk into a saucepan. Together with this, I'm going to be adding 2 big peels of a lemon, 2 big peels of an orange, and 2 cinnamon sticks. I'm going to let this cook for 10 to 15 minutes to let it infuse, and once I feel that I have enough of the creme Catalana flavor, I'm going to move on with beating my egg yolks and sugar. In the meantime with this, I'm just going to cook this to simmer for about 15 minutes, and I'm just going to stir it well to make sure the bottom doesn't burn, because if the bottom gets too hot, then the milk solids can burn onto the bottom, and then you lose some of the protein and fat that make this its nice creamy texture. So I'm going to let this cook, and I'm going to be stirring it every couple of minutes. So now that I've let this simmer for a bit, I'm now going to strain it out to get out all of the curdled milk that might have came out. So I'm just going to ladle this into a measuring cup so I can tell how much of my milk evaporated. Alright, so I'm going to take out everything in this pot. And it doesn't have to be super clean, but just so that it doesn't have any of this curdled milk. I'm going to set this back onto my stove, and as you can see, I strained off quite a bit of this curdled stuff. So I'm just going to set my strainer aside, and you can tell that a lot of the milk evaporated. So that's why I wanted to measure it. I lost about 100 milliliters, and that is your goal. So I'm going to top this up to try to get it to 450. So this is 350 milliliters for me. And then I'm going to add an extra 100 just to make it say 450. And now that I got this milk in, I'm going to put this just on some low heat to start warming it. And I'm only going to warm it until there's small bubbles on the side. In the meantime, I'm going to begin whipping my egg yolks with my sugar. I have an immersion whisk here, and I'm just going to pour in my sugar and my egg yolks. What I'm using is 2 duck egg yolks and 2 chicken egg yolks. I think that the duck fat really adds a unique flavor to this dish. If you don't actually have access to duck yolks, I would then use 5 chicken egg yolks. I only use duck yolks because I find it adds an interesting flavor to this. Now that I have all my sugar, I'm just gonna beat this until it's really white. The egg yolks should about triple in size. And while I do that, my milk should come up to good temperature. Because I already had some that was basically boiling, it heated up very fast, so I'm just gonna turn it on low while I beat these. Alright, so I'm done whipping here, and you can see these have really tripled, and when you pull it back and let it go down, you can see it forms this ribbon. So now I'm gonna take my whisk attachment off, and using my ladle from earlier, I'm gonna temper in some of my milk. So moving over here, I'm gonna take a spoonful of my milk and just stir it into the yolks. And this tempers them so that they don't completely cook and scramble when you add them to the milk. And I'm gonna fill this with as much milk as I can, and then return it all to the pot and cook it on medium heat until it's thickened and can coat the back of a spoon. So now I'm gonna keep my milk heat at about medium. I'm gonna pour in the rest of this mixture, give it a stir as I stir it in. And now I'm gonna cook this until it's thickened and can coat the back of my spatula. While I cook this, I'm just gonna be stirring in a figure 8. And once this thickens, I'll show you what it should look like. And it should take about 5 to 10 minutes. Now that this is thickened, a good indicator of when it's thickened is you can see all the bubbles have disappeared. And I'm just gonna cook this for 1 minute extra and then turn off my heat and set it aside. Now that I cooked this my extra minute, I'm gonna take this off the heat so it can no longer heats up. And I'm gonna pour in my cream, which I have 250 milliliters. In gelato, you use a lot of egg yolks, so you don't have to use as much heavy cream to get the same fat content as ice cream. That's why I use nearly twice the amount of milk than heavy cream. Now that this is completely stirred together, I'm gonna set this aside. Now that I made this, I'm gonna set this somewhere cool so that it can come down to a lower temperature so that I can churn it next. I personally like to have texture in my ice cream, and I find that the perfect thing for my creme Catalana gelato is to have burnt sugar shards because it kind of imitates the topping of the creme Catalana, how you'd have this burnt layer of sugar that you'd flambe with a torch. So to try to recreate that in an ice cream form, I'm gonna make a dry caramel. So I have 100 grams of white sugar, and without adding any extra water, I'm gonna add this to a saucepan. And I'm gonna cook this until it's a dark amber color. And you're gonna see that it's not necessarily gonna melt evenly, and it's not gonna have much phase. It's gonna go to this dark amber color. And I'm just gonna cook this until it's nice and completely melted and I can't see any crystals. And then I'm gonna pour it on top of my prepared parchment baking sheet. In my opinion, the best thing to stir this with, if you have the want to, is just using a wooden spoon. So besides giving it that initial stir with the spoon, I'm gonna try just to shake the pan to try to evenly dissolve my sugar. And it's not really gonna dissolve in anything, it's more melting. And I'm just gonna make sure it evenly melts. But what's gonna happen is the sides are gonna start to melt, and there's gonna be these dots that start forming. And I'm just gonna cook this until it's this nice layer of molten sugar. And it's gonna be this really nice deep amber color. If you think that your sugar's caramelizing a bit unevenly, you can add a tiny bit of water. In my case, I must have my heat not directed in the same place, so it's not completely melting evenly. But as you can see, it's becoming and getting to a nice dark amber color. So because there's not much water in this caramel, it will start to burn. But I think that the burnt taste also tastes really nice in this. So it's nearly there, and I'm just gonna cook it a bit more to dissolve these clumps. Now this is clump-free. I'm gonna pour this onto my prepared baking sheet with some parchment paper. And I'm trying to do this in an even layer. And work fast, because this is not only smoky, but it's gonna completely set. Now that I have a nice thin layer, I'm gonna let this set and it's gonna be completely crunchy, which that takes from 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm just gonna set this aside. So right before my gelato goes into the ice cream machine to churn, I like to break up this sheet of caramel into some smaller pieces. And I really do like how this makes a substitute for the brulee. So I'm just gonna smash it with the back of a spoon to break it up into some small pieces so that they don't harm my machine. Now the sugar is ready to go into the gelato once it's done. It's gonna taste delicious, and it's really good to eat, and it really imitates the brulee on top of creme Catalana. So while I was getting everything done for another batch of gelato, I let my gelato base sit outside to cool, and I turned my ice cream churning machine on so that it could pre-cool and that it's all ready. So now I'm just gonna pour this in to my bucket for my machine. And I'm gonna churn this until it reaches my desired consistency. So I'm gonna have this on the more solid side. But just let your machine do its work and churn it until you get to your desired consistency. Right before this is at the consistency that I want, I'll take it out and spoon in all of my crunchy caramel so that it can mix in while it does its last bits of work. So now that my ice cream is done, I can open it up and give it a taste. And you can tell that it has this delicious creme Catalana flavor with the crunchy bits of caramel. And if you want to eat the soft serve, you can eat it right now. or let it sit in the freezer to cool for a couple hours. That's what I'll do. I hope you enjoy this recipe. Leave any questions in the comments below. The recipe's always in the description, and hope you watch more of my videos. Thank you. Goodbye.